share screen, and let's just do desktop. Okay, so now I'm going to have the infinite mirror situation. There we go. Now, just to double check, I want to make sure my live video is showing the right thing. It looks good. So this is going to be kind of tough. I'm going to try and keep the chat window in like a side corner here. Maybe I don't need Lightroom to be quite so huge. Let's do this deal. There we go. Okay, so these are in no particular order. I've already imported them, and I've gone actually back and forth since creating, you know, essentially I always had a preset that I imported with using the Adobe standard profile, but the DVLOP profiles that DVLOP came up with kind of changed everything, and it created a nice baseline starting point that was very different than Adobe standard, a lot more saturated colors and a nice little bump specifically in kind of the skin tone region. So that's all good, but it required me to make some changes to my presets that I never had before. Hopefully my voice stays with us through this. So yeah, I ended up making a lot of changes, and I've gone back and forth between which of the 5 I really like as a starting point, or I guess which of the 4, because I never use a black and white as a starting point. Right now, my current kind of flavor is To Boldly Go. That's sort of my favorite starting point. But no matter what, and I know other photographers have done little live broadcasts and stuff like that, no matter what, I try to never look at the images straight out of camera. That's similar to what a lot of photographers do, especially if you use a preset that's very extreme in its adjustments. It will never look right if you compare everything zeroed out to where it is in your end result. So always import with something, even if it's going to change. And for me, all of the ones you currently see are going to have To Boldly Go applied. So yeah, I'm just going to start editing and talking my way through stuff. So I'm going to switch to as shot for this. So the as shot white balance actually looks pretty great. Everything about this looks pretty great right out of the can. Most of the changes, I would say 99% of the changes I make have to do with exposure and white balance still. Now, just as an aside, this has nothing to do with editing, but one of the things I've discovered with the Nikon D850 camera is that it has 2 new auto white balance features. One of them that lets you adjust your white balance in a relative way. So it will take what it normally meters as what the white balance should be, and you can say, no, I always want it to be a little bit cooler, or I always want it to be a little bit warmer, or greener, or more magenta. It's really kind of neat. I'm still playing around with it, but no matter what, you know, you're shooting in a scene like this with all these different color balls, and or you're shooting in a scene, you know, maybe it's against a really blue sky or some big, huge, solid color. It's sometimes impossible for the camera to get white balance correct. So sometimes you get lucky, and you know, a one-click edit looks great, but most of the time I need to just nudge the white balance to be a little bit more precise to where I want it. So anyway, I wouldn't be at all surprised if I edit these very differently than the actual photographers that took the picture. So I'm just going to go with my instinct and roll with it. So this one I love with To Boldly Go. I'm just dialing in a little bit of exposure, and then I want to add, I think I might have already dragged one in, but I want to add just a gradient. So I click on the gradient here just to darken this side a little bit so that your focus and your eye is immediately drawn to this diagonal portion of the faces. And this is just an awesome picture in general, compositionally. So here we go. Immediately out of the gate, I would say this one looks a little too warm, a little too saturated. So either I would just quickly try a different preset, which I'm going to try and make it so. That's a little better, but even still, it's a bit warm. I'm going to just use a little bit of the no orange to kind of rein that back in a bit. And because it's got such a crazy bright background, I'm going to pull my highlights back. Boom. I almost always try and resist jumping down here and starting to like adjust weird skin tone stuff. You might be able to dial it in perfectly for one picture, but if I had a whole set of images from this day and in this scene, I'd be just spending forever going through this and not getting a result that really makes or breaks the photo. Oh, one other thing is, anytime I see someone's ears that are like backlit with bright light like this, I do tend to gravitate more towards a black and white option, just to save on having to get in here with a brush tool or something and desaturate that. That is so time consuming. And, you know, I'm looking at the picture now, and it actually, I think, does just fine as a black and white. It solves all those slightly weird skin problems. And the biggest thing I tinker with my black and white preset is actually the white balance. So this still isolates different and emphasizes different tonal qualities, even though it's a black and white image. Most of the time I leave it set to what it was shot at, or what the preset starts with. But sometimes if it's still not quite there, or the skin is really dark or something like that, I'll tinker with the white balance and just see where it ends up. But that's it. Maybe drag in a little bit of gradients, maximize some dynamic range. Boom. I guess I'll crop these too if I feel like I would crop it a certain way. This one, I'm immediately going towards like a 16:9 crop. I love people's faces kind of going through the upper third. Let me just check on here. Okay, good. The upper third of the composition. So it is clear to me that this was likely shot either because the photographer really liked this wood thing up here, or they were using the center focus point. That's much more likely the case, and I see that all the time. And I generally try and use the uppermost center focus point on my camera as my starting point, because I'll be much more likely to compose with people's heads kind of in this area of the frame. This also just seems to work pretty well as a 16:9. And yeah, if I get it as a, if I deliver it as a 16:9, that's how my clients get it. I don't do a variety of crops for the same photos. Okay, I just want to look at a few other presets just to see if any seem to jump a little better. Maybe Engage works kind of well for this. It's a little softer, and that's just the one-click Engage. But if I go back to Boldly Go, I think I actually like that even more. One of the cool things about To Boldly Go is that it kind of bumps this yellowish, brownish skin tone range. You can see, hopefully, in this little navigator window, as I float over, let's try Make It So versus Engage versus Set Phasers to Stun, and then To Boldly Go. To Boldly Go really has this shift where the skin tones just pop, which I'm really liking these days. So, oops, we got somebody else chiming in. Let's see. Somebody wants to take a look at the process. Yeah, I feel bad for people that maybe it was a little unclear, and I don't want it to be like, oh, you have to buy stuff to do this, but I wanted to do a detailed where we were at before, but it's pretty close. So yeah, when I compose something, I want people's heads going right through the upper third of the frame, sort of like this, and I'm willing to sacrifice that little bit of interest up here to achieve that. So I might tint this a little bit more green. Now I'm looking at it, their skin tones are a tad magenta. That was weird. Yeah, I don't know. And because I don't know what happened, it'll probably happen again, Nicholas. So, you know, if it keeps dipping out, just I'll send an email to everybody with the screen recording for the link. So don't have to worry too much unless you have a dying question to ask me now while everything's working. So this photo looks pretty cool. I like the overall green vibe to it. I'm going to try and Make It So because I love when green and red kind of interact, especially in the shadows. And this one has obviously a lot of green, and this preset, Make It So, has a bit of a red shadow bump in the tone curve, actually, right here in the blue. Let me take that out, and you can see it goes more blue, and as I bring it back, it turns more warmish red. So I don't know exactly where the default was. Let me undo that. But there we go. And then I'm just going to add some gradients to darken in the sky up there. And then one of the gradients, I actually nudged the tint to be a little more green because without that, it looks a little magenta for some reason. So there we go. Just subtle things. I might pull back the highlights even more. I guess I can pull back a fair amount of dynamic range. So let me get rid of this this gradient. I don't think that's needed. If I just pull back the highlights, done. That looks pretty good. one thing I do want to do is see if there's any blue to be brought out. There we go. So these blues and these oranges, that's all they do is add more or take away, adds more blue or takes away orange. Yeah, pretty straightforward. Actually, I'm going to add one more little gradient. And at the end of this, I'm probably going to upload all these photos to a gallery so everybody can see the end result of the live edit. But yeah, this one, I like that it's got mismatched skin tones, 2 different people. It's really nice. I can still white balance it to be pretty much where I want it. Let's try a different one. Let's try engage. Boop, boop, boop. Looks pretty good to me. Probably give a little darkening there, and then let me try a little blue, but it brings out too much blue in the suit, so I'm going to leave it as is. Ooh, this is nice. Keep chiming in on the chat if you want to reassure me, give me confidence that you're still able to hear and see what I'm doing. Just waiting for that dropout to happen again. I'm going to try set phasers to stun for this one, although with the darker skin tone it may not work super well, but I think the face is lit enough. The thing I like about set phasers to stun works really well in just straight up outdoor light, and it just creates these deep shadows, shadow contrast. You can even see it in the histogram here, this huge bump in the blues on the shadow side, but her skin is a fair amount brighter, so I'm just going to literally gradient her half, maybe add a little darkening on there just to nudge your focus, just like that. This one's cool. Let's try set phasers again. It really does well in just outdoor shadow light. Let me just make sure the mic is rolling. Check, 1, 2, cool. All right, this is a little magenta. Oh, one other thing I tend to do when I'm editing is I hit the L key once, and it fades the surrounding borders of everything but the image. I don't know if it actually shows that in the screencast, but that really helps you tune into your colors, especially. So, yeah, just to reiterate, I think I've mentioned that in other places. This is a cool photo. I'm probably going to go black and white with it. Something like that. Okay, cool. This one's exposed for the highlights. I would like to know what camera it is. Let's see if I can... All right, 73. It's probably a D8 something. That's a lot of resolution. So yeah, if you expose for the highlights like that, I generally boost my exposure all the way up and then work back. I'm adjusting exposure. Exactly. Yeah, you can use obviously a ton of different settings with each gradient, but I just use one at a time, and usually it's just the exposure. And I'll do it again here on this photo coming up. Okay, but just to reiterate, whenever I have an underexposed picture like this, where I've exposed for the highlights to retain all this nice blue, I boost my exposure until the skin tones look the way I want them, and then I work back the brighter highlights from there, using obviously gradients about a -0.3, -0.4. If it's not dark enough, I just draw in another one. I don't. I like the kind of organic overlapping inconsistency from one to the next. And then I'm going to try a little bit of extra blue using this. Boom. It's a little warm too, so let me just dial in some white balance. There. I like it. Next. I'm going to start going a little faster just because this one's a little out of focus. It's a bummer. Cool effect though. Let's do engage. Really bring out that green and warm it up. Cool. Here we go. This one looks awesome right out of the can. Just to show you, something will probably look too something, either too contrasty, too saturated, whatever, but this obviously has To Boldly Go pre-applied, but just to show you what everything looks like reset, there it is straight out of camera. So that looks pretty good to me. I'm going to just nudge some green and maybe a little bit of cooling off And that's it. I like it. We could try a little blue, but it's going to really tint his shirt in a way. Could do one little gradient here. Once you get good at the gradients, it's like really, really fast. You know exactly what you want to do, and it's not like as time consuming as using a brush or something like that, I find. Let's go for, no, let's stick to Boldly Go on this sucker. Just going to warm it up like crazy. This would be an awesome 16:9, so done. There we go. Probably darken from the bottom up a little. I love that. Now, the variable fade, I've had a lot of questions about. And it works really well when you've got, yeah, I'm just using the M key for the gradient. And then if you dive deep back into my Patreon, you'll see a little write-up about Better Touch Tool. And I have keys mapped for that. So I'm using my mouse a little bit more right now just to show you in more detail what I'm doing, but I have hotkeys for most everything defined through Better Touch Tool. So make sure you read up about that. But yeah, it is, you get very fast and quick at it once you do it enough. Anyway, I'm going to shift this to be a little bit more warmer in the split tone. Yeah, it's Better Touch Tool is amazing. Oh, but let me talk about variable fade. This is a super, super subtle thing, but I promise it makes a difference in kind of the feel, the organic, I think. I describe it as organic feel. These are just 4 different little points where I created a mask of just a section being slightly faded. So it's not brighter, it's just literally the black point is lighter than the black point on the rest of the image. This one kind of dives in down here. So anytime I have an image where I have a really dark area around it, I will add, actually this black and white might be a good example of what the variable fade looks like. Here we go, that's perfect. So it's almost like you're getting a little light spill somewhere, and you get this nice, really cool effect that I use all the time. You want to be light with it, and if you've never used fades like that before, you probably want to be heavier than you should, so proceed with caution. But yeah, just click through a few and see which one. This one balances really nicely. It kind of comes off the right side, fade 3, so that's where I'm going to leave that one. Looks great. This is cool. I'm going to use, let's see, let's try and make it so. I'm going to just white balance a little to the green. Nice. I like this. Good vibe. I would never take a picture like this, so I love seeing photos like that, especially with my editing, because it's cool knowing I would never take a picture like that. Not that it's bad, it's just it's not the way my brain sees the world. Feel free to update me if I start to cut out or the feed drops or something like that. Let's try and make it so for this. And I'm just going to gradient the heck out of all those highlights. I fear again that if I try the blue, it's going to mess with his suit a little much, especially on the collar. So I'm going to walk that back a bit. We don't need that much blue luminance. In fact, if you're really particular, I'm generally not too worried, but what's my advice for the bride who have been tanning 2 months solid? Yeah. It's tough. I mean, I use Make It So and Engage. Engage has you can watch the histogram. Let's see, which one am I using now? I think Make It So. Engage really clips the highlights a lot. So it pulls back and kind of mutes the sky. It just creates a much softer and a slightly greener image overall. Make It So has a bit more contrast and a bit more of a pop, and the color tinting is just a bit different, a little more magenta and pink than Engage. So those are the major differences, yeah. But talking about people that tan too much, that's what I use the no orange stuff for, and you might need to go even more extreme than what these 3 set up for you. But yeah, I mean, there's only so much you can do. If somebody has a really, really bad sunburn, you might be able to use hue and like adjust it, but it's never going to look exactly the way you want it. But that's just the reality of somebody having a really red mark on their face or a really blotchy, skin color. I would definitely be leaning more toward black and white wherever possible. And that's one huge reason why with my black and whites, I don't deliver in the full gallery black and white and color. It's one or the other. So that gives me an out if there's some issue with skin tone. Now I love Make It So on this one. Remember, Make It So adds a bit of like purpley, warm, reddish colors in the shadows, and that against this blue gradient happening is kind of awesome. You can just see the difference. Let me walk it back some. So it's here versus here. I love how that transitions. Yeah. Now the sky is a little. I wish I knew what camera this was. Might be the D750. I don't know, but the blues look a little bit like greenish to me, so I might bump that up. And they actually look a little too saturated, so I'm just gonna dial it back a little, right to there. Looks awesome. Let's darken up the bottom. Boom. Keep the conversation going. Alrighty, so this one is interesting. I used to really like this kind of rainbowy effect in the using the prism and stuff like that, but over the years I've stopped liking that. And I immediately start looking toward black and white because it's very unnatural to the scene. You might be able to like gradient out with some desaturation or something, but that's just, it gets kind of weird. You can already see it's like not matching. So immediately resistance is futile. My favorite black and white that has ever existed. I'm also seeing this little spot here, so I'm gonna get rid of that. Boom. And then probably drag in a couple of gradients here. Notice part of that yellow issue I was having was forcing me to white balance more, which looks right when done. Can you elaborate just a bit? I'm not sure. Part of the yellow issue. Oh, after the update? Is that what you're referring to, the yellow issue? Or was it this exact photo I was on? Oh, this looks awesome right out of the can. I might white balance a touch green, but I'm done. I like that. That's also just a well-lit photo. I do wish his nose wasn't high lit. I wish his face was a bit more evenly lit, but hers is so well lit that it doesn't even matter. Jump back in. Not sharing my screen yet, am I? Good. Yeah, I didn't have any yellow update issue. So Chip, one of the guys in the group on Patreon, Chip said he just did it full uninstall and reinstall, and that worked. So I would go for that. But I never saw or had any problems with yellows specifically. So I'm not sure what the deal is. Anyway, one other thing, I'm going to limit my bandwidth a bit just to see if it is a bandwidth issue. I don't know if I can do that. Okay, so I'm going to roll through. If it cuts out again, just I'm going to scream through these and talk my way just like I have been, but record it and send you the recording. This one's awesome. I'm going to set phasers to stun, although I'm kind of losing them a bit in the tree with that contrast. I think it'll still work. Let me dial in my white balance a bit. There we go. I like that. I don't know what's going on in this upper area, but it's really, really cool. I mean, we got 8 watching. Good. Seems like everybody's found their way back here. So I apologize. It keeps cutting out, but I'm not sure what to do about it. Maybe Nessa's uploading something. So, yeah, whatever's going on in this, oh man, somebody's really having problems. Yeah. Well, that link works. So I don't know what to do. Let me double check that link works though. Yeah, it's just not working for her. That is okay. I feel bad, but you know, live edits always have an adventurous technical IT troubleshooting aspect to it. Okay, one thing with this and this cool thing in the upper portion is I might darken it a little, but actually add a little bit of extra warmth or color to it, just to have it stand out. It's really awesome. And then maybe a little bit of darkening down here. Done. Let's see how we're doing. So that's quite a different feel. But you can see how everything about the gradient is nudging your eye right to the couple, essentially. Now, I never use the radial filter ever. It's just too specific, too time-consuming, and I just never get it to look right. I don't know. It just always looks too much like somebody took a brush and started going crazy. But that's maybe partly me and my eye and my ability. I'm not an illustrator. This, I think I would go 16 by 9. That's cool. Skin is a tad magenta, so we'll just white balance that way. Oh, good, a nice indoor shot. Maybe go a little no orange on this one. Boom. This one is a weird crop the way it's photographed. I'd probably try and get rid of this. So maybe something like that. Let's go black and white. Done. Yeah, and again, I know radio filter can do a lot of it, but it's too circular, too oval shaped. I like the kind of, the blob that I kind of get from using gradients. It's either more of like a line or just this like blobbish, shape, blobbish vignette. I'm going to add a little variable fade. Now, unfortunately, with the variable fades, is it overwrites anything you've already done. So you'd really want to start with the fade first and then drag in other gradients. Yeah, this looks awesome. Cool. The white balance is clearly just in camera. It was way too warm, so we're going to work that back and see what we can do here. I feel bad. I'm going to just tell her. There we go. So actually, there's like this weird little like weird dark thing happening at the bottom. So I'm going to actually add a gradient to brighten that up, and then add another one that's a little darker just over there, so that my eye doesn't. There's like this. It was just weird. Straighten it just a tiny bit. Probably doesn't even need that. Cool. Which did I use to boldly go again? Yeah, that's a good one. All right, this is interesting. There's absolutely zero fill light happening on their bodies, probably because there's nothing behind the photographer and there's nothing underneath or below these people to, give some brightness. So one thing you might play around with is just using dehaze. But I don't know, with this it adds a little too much contrast. So yeah, you're probably looking at, this would be a fantastic 16 by 9, but you're probably looking at just kind of keeping it the way that it is here. I like that crop a little better. This is all blown highlights, so you don't want to darken it so much that you can actually tell the edge. Like right here you're starting to see, so I would actually work this back to be right about like there, where you don't see that clear loss of where the data stops suddenly. This is an awesome picture. All right, so the white balance overall was just, it's already in the camera doing plus 26, so we're gonna work that back some. But let me try a different preset. Let's do this sucker. This very green tinty, but I like it. I also like this orange that's happening up here, so maybe bring that out a little bit. I love that. Done. Oh, that's intense. Set phaser's just done. Let's see what that can do. Yeah, I'm going to leave it kind of overwhelmingly bright. Maybe do a little bit of no orange, or a lot of it. Actually, kind of like it right there. We're bailing on the live feature for now because it just keeps dropping. Don't know why, but that's okay. There we go. Boom. This looks fantastic, just as it is. This in something like that. Let's try slightly different flavor. A little no orange. Their skin is really warm. There we go. Add a little bit of gradient darkening. Cool. That's a Canon camera. It's always weird to see color shifts. I mean, the DevLOP profiles do the best that I've ever seen at matching one camera to the next, but it's still a little jarring to go from one camera brand to the next. This is cool. Sometimes I would, with an extreme low angle with a wide lens like this, I would think about doing distortion correction, but they are also so distorted that it's going to be a problem. So I would just leave it as is. Distortion is cool. It can make things look pretty darn interesting, as long as it's not unflattering for the subjects. I'm going to try this one with Engage. It tends to do pretty well with nighttime pictures. Although I kind of like the warmth. There we go. That's awesome. Other than this, I guess I can just bloop. Basically the same. Oh, this one's at the Peabody. This is one reason I never use lights on stands, because then you have to deal with them in the post, which is annoying. So I've shot this venue many times, and I just bounce flash the whole thing. Don't think I could get as good of a picture, like I couldn't get this width while bouncing. I don't think the bounce would reach them, but I would just photograph them closer. But this looks pretty good. Ooh, interesting. I wonder what lens this was. Looks like either some sort of free lens or maybe an old something. I'm going to use Make It So. Let's give it a little bit of white balance love. Boom. I wonder if this is a lens baby. It says it's an 85. Huh. This looks great. Let's add some warmth. I'm going to add a little variable fade here. Probably should have done that first. I always forget. It like overrides every time I forget, essentially. It's really my own fault. There we go. I like that. Now I'm going to re-add some of the gradients. Looks good to me. These are really good photos. It's actually a lot better than I thought. So we lost a little bit of blue. I don't know what's going on in the sky there. It's like got this red warm to blue thing. So I'm going to darken that and add just some white balance to bring back some of that. And then I'm going to add another one over here. And then I'm also actually, this would be cool. Yeah, let's do this. And then white balance it a touch green. Looks good to me. That's cool. Crop it in a little. Feels like it should be balanced. I'm going to go black and white. That's always fun with people in tuxedos. You kind of lose them a little bit in the trees, but I don't even mind. I think it's cool as a black and white. Especially when dudes are in black and white tuxedos. It's like my favorite. All right. Oh my gosh, I'm only halfway done. So I'm going to save some of these for next week as well, because it's a little bit, it's getting a little long. Nobody's going to watch a 45-minute broadcast of this stuff. Let's try to set phasers to stun. So any that I don't get to today, I'll get to next week. And again, these are in no particular order, so I didn't choose some to start with versus others. I wish her face was a little more in focus. Oh, it is. Weird. There's something weird happening with the bokeh. Never mind, she is as sharp as I would ever want. That's perfect. Nicely done. Although the colors might be pretty great. The camera missed white balance, clearly, like a lot here. I wonder what camera this is. I'm going to go black and white. That's what I would do. And probably, actually, I don't know. The sky's getting weird. So back to good old faithful to boldly go. Let's go 16 by 9. Probably set the crop here-ish. It's not my favorite crop, but that's what it is. And then I'd probably just let this guy go because there's too much weird artifacting around the clouds. All right. And we'll stop on this one today. Let me fix, let's try to set phasers to stun. And get some, ooh, this is interesting. Yeah, that one does work the best. It's weird. We'll do one more. Since it looks like the exact same subject and location, whoop, but different white palettes. Weird. So let's kick this back. Nice vibe. I like it. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. Appreciate everybody that watched, and yeah, we'll see you next week.